Computer. Hey everyone, this is Selah. It is the 29th of September, 2025. And tonight we're going to be talking about winter wellness. And we're not just going to talk about like, oh, what to do when you get sick, but we're actually going to start at the foundation and talk about systems in the body that need to be supported in order to create immunity and maintain a strong immune system before we're even going to talk about what to do with you when you get sick. And then we will go over those things as well. But I really wanted to start with a solid foundation, a conversation about what it is to be healthy and well in this time. So, the first thing I want to say, just for the record, is that it is not a failure if your child gets sick in the winter or anytime because children are meant to get sick. They're building their immune systems and they're seeing things for the first time. And when they're seeing things for the first time, they have to create antibodies to these things. Okay. So the antigen presents itself, the body creates an antibody to respond to that antigen. And then we start to build immunity over time. So children's immune systems are much more complex, and that's why this is a really great conversation to just talk about how to like support their baseline wellness from the very beginning. Okay, so we're just going to go into that first and then the systemic support. And then we're going to talk about mineral, element, and nutritional aspects of how to support those systems. And then we're going to talk about acute care. Okay, so I've got, I think, like 7 or 8 different systems that we're going to go over. So the first one is digestion and gut health. We can all imagine why, right? We know that 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So when we have balance of microbes, like all the good guys, some of the neutral guys, when they're all there, okay, we have strong defense against invaders. When we have what's called dysbiosis is really just not having the right bugs in the right places. And I mean good bugs like probiotics that we talk about a lot, right? So when we have an imbalanced microbiome, we have weak defenses, more inflammation, and higher risk of infection. The gut produces this thing called secretory IgA antibodies. You're going to hear me talk about secretory IgA a lot, okay? These coat viruses and bacteria, blocking them from attaching or spreading. So we have secretory IgA in the mucous membranes of the body. So that's like the gut, that's the nose, the lungs, also the genitourinary tract as well. Okay. So also the other thing about the digestion and gut health is this is where the utilization and absorption of nutrients happens. So if this is offline, if it's inflamed, if we've got a dysbiotic state and we've got a bunch of like parasites in there and like the bad bacteria, we are not going to be absorbing our nutrients very well. And then you're going to be lacking the nutrients that we're going to talk about further down the line in this video that you need to keep your immune system well. So it's like a two-prong effect here. Additionally, when we have inflammation, that causes the basement membrane of the small intestines to be kind of puny and weak and not have a strong boundary. So then all of a sudden we start to leak things out into the bloodstream via the intestines that shouldn't be there, like bacteria fragments and toxins. So then you've got bacteria fragments and toxins in your circulation of your blood, and that's going to set you back if a new virus or bacteria appear, or it's the reason that you're encountering more of this in the blood because it went through the digestive tract and leaked out into the bloodstream. Also, want to just mention the gut lung axis. This is sort of also a piece of the secretory IgA. If you have a healthy gut, you're going to have stronger mucosal defenses in the sinuses and the lungs. And this really is like the kickback to what I just mentioned in the secretory IgA, because this is made in the gut and then that supports the development of the secretory IgA in the sinuses and the lungs. We'll talk about it a lot. You'll understand what that is at the end of this call because you'll have heard about it like 7 times. Okay, next system, liver and detoxification. Okay, so the liver takes out the trash of the body. The liver processes viral debris, and it's like so basically like when you're encountering a virus, your body is like, okay, we got to attack this thing. And you can imagine like a battlefield, right? Where there's like dead bodies and bloody swords and cannons. And somebody has got to take out the trash. Somebody's got to bring some healthy housekeeping into this battlefield, or else everything's going to get like rotten and stinky. So the liver and the role of liver in detoxification steps in a viral process or a bacterial process for that matter and does the cleanup. Okay, that cuts down on inflammation. Also, in the winter, we tend to have higher stress. We have holiday parties. We eat different foods. We have more hormones like cortisol running through our system because we're hanging out with family members we don't normally hang out with and encountering new stressful situations. So, when we support our liver in this situation, we also have higher resilience. Also, the liver stores vitamin A, vitamin D, iron, copper, B12, and glucose in the form of glycogen. Okay. So these are nutrients that the immune system burns through during an illness. And you'll see we talk about replacing these things a lot in order to have better immunity. So we'll talk about these again. But so these are things that we use a lot. Okay. And so because if the liver is like not detoxifying properly or not fluid, it cannot mobilize these vitamins and minerals to the right place, and then they're not useful. Okay, so another reason to support the liver. The gallbladder and liver also and bile flow help absorb fat soluble vitamins like A and A, specifically A and D, the ones I'm thinking about. E and K are also fat soluble vitamins. Those are the ones that increase our immunity. So we have to make sure we can actually digest the fat soluble vitamins by having the right liver gallbladder relationship and secreting enough bile. And then basically, it's just important to understand that also any medicines, supplements, or herbs that you're taking in like during the course of your illness, your body still has to process those things. It still has to detox those things. So that's also where the liver comes in. So the liver has like 4 or 5 different reasons that it's important. And we're going to talk about how to support the liver. Oh, one more. Okay. Glutathione, the master detoxifier of the liver, calms inflammation and keeps immune cells functioning in the middle of an oxidative stress event from infection. So here's the deal. When you're sick, you can overshoot, you can hit it right head on, or you can undershoot. And we want the immune system to give us just enough immune effort to kill the bug and then to complete the process and move on. Sometimes in children, we overshoot because they're still learning, like their immune system is still creating its memory. So glutathione really helps calm the excess immune reaction or excess immune response. And that's the final piece of why we want to support the liver in illness, okay? Or not even in illness. This is like in preparation for illness. This is just like day to day. Okay, next one, mucosal barriers. We talked about this just a little while ago in the gut because the gut is lined with is a mucosal barrier lined system. But we also often think about the nose, the throat, and the lungs in this situation. These are our first line of defense. It's a physical barrier. If the mucosa is healthy, viruses have a harder time taking hold. It's slippery. It can grab the virus and then you can spit up the mucus and blow it out of your nose. You don't want to suck that stuff back in. Get it out, right? Like, and so this is where we talked about secretory IgA before. It binds to pathogens. It kind of grabs them. So secretory IgA and mucus are not the same thing, but they are a team that work together. Okay. All right. The next system or awareness is the system around sleep and stress regulation. Okay. Melatonin, cortisol rhythms, and autonomic balance directly impacts immune readiness. Okay. So sleep is when your immune system learns. It's where it learns to remember. I've seen these antigens. I'm creating these antibodies. It's kind of like where it creates its memory. Okay. So that's the first reason. And then when you produce a pathogen, they're fighting cells, glycogen, growth hormone are all a really important part of this process. And growth hormone, glycogen deposits are all made during sleep. Okay. Also, we use melatonin. Melatonin is our hormone of like sleep and wake. And at night, we have more melatonin. Melatonin is not just responsible for making you fall asleep and waking you up on time. Melatonin is a huge antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. And we actually have like cool melatonin that is food-based that has its capacity for antioxidant, anti-inflammatory is like 400 times normal melatonin. Okay. I'm wanting to turn this into I'm wanting to see everyone. I'm wanting to change my view. So I'm just going to take a second and do that rather than try and talk at the same time. Gallery. I just want to see everyone. Okay, perfect. There we are. Okay. Also, we're still in sleep and stress regulation. Okay. Chronic stress raises cortisol and adrenaline, which weakens the mucosal immunity, shrinking the thymus activity where your T cells mature. That's a big part of your immune system. And this lowers our secretory IgA. So when we're just like stress, we got cortisol running high, that secretory IgA, which is like the first line of defense in our mucosal layer, is not playing. Okay. Stress causes inflammation. And when we're already dealing with the chronic inflammation due to stress, and then you get sick on top of that, it's just adding insult to injury. And there's a piece too about understanding how the mitochondria and the cell work. When mitochondria are supposed to be acting like power plants and giving us lots of energy, they actually resort to becoming battleships and immune fighters when there's illness upon illness upon illness, and then we lack energy. So that's the whole picture around sleep and stress regulation. Okay. Metabolic balance. Okay. Blood sugar swings weaken immunity and increase inflammation. Every single time you feel that cold, clammy, spacey, shaky feeling when you don't eat enough food, your cortisol is spiking. It's spiking to try and raise your blood sugar back for you because your body feels like you're dying. We don't want our cortisol going like this throughout the day. So it's really important that we teach ourselves and our children to eat throughout the day and maintain our blood sugar. Okay. Immunity requires calories, so we need steady support. Okay. Viruses thrive in an unstable blood sugar environment, especially when the sugar's running high. Okay. Metabolic dysfunction equals sluggish circulation, which means that we can't mobilize the troops of all of our vitamins and minerals to get to the right place at the right time to do their job. And then, I made a note here about how mitochondria who are bogged down with chronic inflammation and unstable blood sugar are set up as battleships, not as power sources, which I just said. All right, a couple more. Respiratory resilience. All right, the lungs are often the weak spot in kids because their airways are smaller and they are more reactive. So, when kids, like when RSV comes around, which is respiratory syndactyly virus, these kids get hospitalized for RSV because their airways are tiny. An adult gets RSV and they can clear the mucus, they can cough it up, they can get it out. And so basically, that's the kids we need to support our kids' lungs specifically. Let's see. It also is of note that if we have chronic respiratory struggles in childhood, it lays down the tracks for those patterns later in adulthood as well. And children's gut-lung axis, remember, secretory IgA is not as sophisticated because they are still developing the gut as well as they're developing their immune system. All right, community and emotional terrain. Emotional stress lowers secretory IgA, here it is again, and immune response. So social connections and rhythm strengthen resilience. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering cortisol and increasing immunity. So what I mean by that is this is like when we're in a calm environment. What makes us feel calm? Feeling like we're supported. We're all here as a family. We're all here as a community. We're all here as a neighborhood. We have other people to rely upon. There's a feeling of I can exhale. It's not all on my shoulders. I don't have to do it all by myself. So literally existing in community and having tight relationships with people raises your immune system. Also acknowledging daily and seasonal rhythms with meals, sleep, outdoor time, even like ceremonial ritual, acknowledging the seasons gives the body and nervous system a sense of safety. Predictability reduces stress load and supports healthy circadian rhythms, which directly influence immune readiness. Okay. So just like before you eat, if you sit down and you bless your food or you say thank you or you do whatever you do before you eat and you are aware of what you're doing, you start to secrete digestive enzymes and salivary enzymes so that your body's prepared for the food. But if you just start eating without doing anything, sometimes your body's trying to catch up. It's the same thing. When you celebrate the fall equinox or Michaelmas or, whatever that is, however you do things, or you could even consider Christmas and solstice, marking the beginning of winter. when you do those things, it's like it reminds your body, like, hey, we're going into the next season. It's gonna be like this, and you're making a connection to the rhythms that are on the planet. You're not gonna walk out naked in December, and you're not gonna wear a coat and snow pants in June. You're gonna dress yourself according to the seasons so that your body is protected appropriately. All right. So now we're going to talk about community, play, and shared care can boost oxytocin and endorphins, which are the positive hormones that make us feel good and also increase immune system. All right. So we want to talk about mineral, elemental, and supplemental support for these 7 systems that we just talked about. Okay. They're not necessarily going to go in order, but we'll have throw shout outs to the different systems as we go. So the first section is diet and lifestyle. Some of these are going to be like really basic, but I just want to speak to all of them because sometimes when we get sick, we go for the most complex things and we forget about the most simple elements of what our body needs when we're ill. Okay, so daily fiber, fruit, vegetables, whole grains, beans, if you're the kind of person who can tolerate them without getting gassy. Okay, fermented foods, sauerkraut. If you're a dairy person, kefir and yogurt, age appropriate probiotics. Did you know that your adult probiotics are not appropriate for your 3-year-old because they have a completely different gut microbiome than you do, and they're heavily bifido based instead of lactobacillus based? So it's important that we're giving our kids the right probiotics. Okay, dietary liver support. How can we eat to support our liver? Okay, cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, collards, all those spicy, those Asian spicy greens like tatsoi and bok choy and all those, they are all cruciferous vegetables. Okay. Onions, garlic, and beets are all super good for the liver. Small amounts of grass fed liver or cod liver oil, if tolerated, for vitamin A, D, and other micronutrients that support detoxification. Okay. I have heard that it might be more important to have sprouted cruciferous vegetables than cooked because depending on the level of heat that you cook your cruciferous vegetables at, it might actually be damaging some of the um, important nutrients that are supporting the liver, specifically the sulfur in those cruciferous vegetables. And eating a lot of like raw broccoli and raw cauliflower for most people is not a great option because it takes so much digestive fire to digest them that's not, we can't just say, oh, well, I'll just eat it raw. I'm not going to cook it. So, um, if you want to look deeper into that, we can definitely have a larger conversation about like the most optimal way to eat for our liver. But this is just the beginning of the conversation. Okay, balanced meals. So, a balanced meal has a protein, a carbohydrate, and a vegetable, unless you're like super going keto or you're doing something more like paleo and you're like leaning away from grains, but you could still have like a potato on your plate or a sweet potato. But having a balance on your plate is always going to support your longevity and especially that glycemic control that we talked about, right? Because fats takes a lot longer to digest them. So when you get enough good fats on your plate, you're going to be digesting for longer and maintaining your blood sugar for longer. Okay. Here's another one. We all know this: avoiding excess sugar, right? Sugar suppresses the immune system, especially during the months of October to December. This is a time when we can be extra careful. This is a time when we eat a lot of candy and cookies, and we're gathering for Halloween, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. So there's lots of opportunities where we could find alternative treats or just be aware. Okay. Also, whenever someone is sick, I want them pooping every day. I don't care if they're not eating because whatever was sitting in the colon is still sitting in the colon and it's getting reabsorbed and those toxins are coming back into the body. And whenever you're sick, we talked about needing to support the detoxification process, right? So we can support the liver all day long, but if your exit portal is shut, you're just going to reabsorb all that stuff that the liver tried to kick out. And then you're just going to end up being sicker for longer, right? So if you can really focus on keeping pooping every day, that might mean that you need to hydrate better. That might mean that you need to use magnesium citrate, calm powder, 365 brand from Whole Foods has a magnesium fizz product that is less expensive than calm powder. Um, you kid might like magnesium gummies. Digestive bitters are another option, adults or kids. Some people like that bitter flavor. Those are really great. They get the digestive enzymes going, they get the digestion going, it gets things moving through the stool. There are more complex ways to address constipation if this is like a chronic issue for you. These are the basics, okay? Um, Milk of magnesia is like the good old standby from the over the counter pharmacy, but I don't even know what's in that. So, adequate hydration and humidified air. Okay. So when your nasal passages are not adequately hydrated, they can get like cracks in them and like the mucus gets thicker and then it doesn't do its job. So our first layer of defense is then sort of held back or damaged due to that. So we just want to keep, whether it's like a pot of boiling water on a wood stove or humidification in the bedroom, we want to keep that air moist, but not so moist that we're creating mold in our environment. So finding correct temperature balance is really important. All right. Also encouraging outdoor play, fresh air, and breath work. Man, talk about like an underrated action, breath work. Just doing alternative nostril breathing, like breathing in out of one nostril, out of the other, back in that one and out down the other, or doing what's called box breathing, where you inhale, hold, exhale, hold for the same count, whether it's 4 seconds or 40 seconds, whatever you can work yourself way up to. These are things that like you're really working with your respiratory system. It's also a really wonderful way to move grief if grief feels like it's stuck. And then outdoor play and fresh air. I mean, we get so boxed in when it gets cold outside. And we forget that on a a normal winter day in North Carolina, if you get outside in a jacket and you start shoveling mulch or doing an activity that requires effort, you're like sweating. So sometimes we're sitting in our house like, oh, it's so cold outside. But if you get outside and you start moving, it actually isn't that cold. Like it's 40 degrees outside, but we're warm, you know? Okay. So those were lifestyle. Now we're going to move on to supplemental support. Okay. Vitamin C, first line antioxidant. It recycles other antioxidants like glutathione. We talked about the master antioxidant in the liver. It supports white blood cells and helps collagen formation and strengthening. So your whole entire gut is lined with collagen, right? So vitamin C, it's going to support that gut lining. We understand how important the gut is in our digestive and in our immunity. Okay. Forms of vitamin C. I sometimes hear that ascorbic acid is less than ideal because it interrupts the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle, which could impact our mitochondrial function. It's probably less important than I'm making it in this moment. It's like get the vitamin C in, but there is also liposomal, which is easier to digest. There is buffered when it has calcium and magnesium. So when we're getting sick, we want to go high dose, and not everyone can handle high dose ascorbic acid because they get diarrhea. So if you use the buffered form, you can take in more. Those are gentler in kids' stomachs. And then whole food powders like acerola, camu camu, give, and rose hips. There's lots of other sources of vitamin C like hibiscus and things like that. You're getting the vitamin C with the added bioflavonoids. Sometimes it's hard to get the dosage high enough to get those really high power vitamin C doses, oral doses when you're ill. So for kids, for general wellness, we're talking about 100 to 250 milligrams once or twice a day. When they're sick, going way high up to bowel tolerance. So whatever they can handle, like 600 milligrams, 800 milligrams. We don't want to overshoot. So you start low and you just go up every day a little bit more. Just make sure they're not having loose stools. Okay. I was like, I wonder how much orange juice it takes. So a cup of fresh squeezed orange juice is 140 milligrams of vitamin C, plus you get the bioflavonoids. You do get a little bit more of a sugar spike. If you just ate the oranges, that might be better. But I think it takes a number of oranges to make a cup of orange juice. But just being aware that, if you were doing fresh squeezed orange juice, they could be drinking that throughout the day and maybe reaching the higher, if they drink like 4 or 5 glasses, that higher dosage. Okay. All right. Done with vitamin C. I want to talk about Saccharomyces boulardii, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. This is a probiotic yeast that I have loved for a long time. I first learned about it from Dr. Brott, who is like at Insight Integrative Medicine in Asheville. When my baby girl Ursa was really little and she was having all this diarrhea and we couldn't get to stop, she's like, just try this. And it worked within a couple days. So that's how I learned it. I learned it as a medicine to stop diarrhea, but it's incredible for the immune system. It has some similarities to medicinal mushrooms, which we'll talk about in just a second. Okay, so because it's a yeast, antibiotics don't wipe it out. You can use it during or after an antibiotic treatment. Okay, it is if you are prone to gut or respiratory problems, you can use this probiotic yeast to support your immune system due to the beta glucans that are present there. Okay, it prevents E. coli, C. difficile, salmonella, candida from attaching to the intestinal wall. So when you're taking on a regular basis and these things, you encounter these things, you're going to be less likely to pick them up. It does work by increasing secretory IgA. Here we are, we're talking about it can't attach to the wall. That's secretory IgA. That's that mucosal layer. It just can't stick. It can't take hold. Okay. It calms down inflammation by decreasing inflammation signaling, reducing tissue damage during illness. So when you're sick and you've got all these endotoxins going in your body, they're going to end up in your intestines and we're going to have an inflammatory event. We know that what happens when the intestines get inflamed, we end up like leaking things out into the bloodstream that we don't want to, that causes more pain and swelling in the body. So if we can just decrease the inflammation during an illness and get things out of here quicker by just binding to them and sending them out, we're going to decrease that inflammation and keep you better longer. All right. It also prevents leaky gut, which I just explained why. Okay, both Saccharomyces and medicinal mushrooms like reishi, maitake, shiitake, turkey tail have beta glucans in their cell walls. This stimulates the innate immune system. They bind to receptors on dendritic cells, macrophages, and natural killer cells. They enhance phagocytosis. That's like the little Pac-Man that comes and eats the bad stuff, engulfing the pathogen. And they modulate cytokine signaling to balance inflammation. So you don't want too much or too little. You want just the right amount. Okay. And so, medicinal mushrooms can be quite expensive. Sometimes it can be hard to get a quality medicinal mushroom product. There's some special testing you can do to make sure it's not just substrate. So this is like a more affordable approach. If you're choosing between one and the other, you can get a lot of similar benefit from taking the Saccharomyces instead of the medicinal mushroom. So again, this is not just something to support your digestion. It really is supporting your whole immune system. All right, let's talk about probiotics, normal probiotics like lactobacillus, bifido, things like that. So why are we using these? Again, the gut is responsible for 70% of the immunity, right? So good flora crowd out pathogens. We're talking about real estate here. If you've got your block filled up with, all the good stores that are making you lots of money, you're going to be a good landlord. If your block is full of dilapidated stores that nobody wants to go to, you can't get very much rent for them, and you're not going to be doing very well as a landlord. So we want to make sure that the real estate in our intestines is made up of the good guys, not the bad guys. Also, probiotics train immune tolerance. This is part of training the immune system of children. Okay, so pathogens enter the gut and the upper respiratory tract, and these probiotics stimulate secretory IgA, strengthen the intestinal lining, balance immune activation, like we talked about earlier. We don't want to overcompensate, undercompensate. And they outcompete Streptococcus, Haemophilus influenza, Moxarella catarrhalis, and other respiratory tract and gut infections. Better absorption of nutrients. Again, if your correct probiotics are in place, you're going to be digesting your food better, getting more out of it, and then you're going to get all these micronutrients that we're in the middle of talking about into your system, and then you're going to deal with immunity better, and you're going to have better bowel movements. And that goes back to what we're talking about when we're sick and we're detoxing and we want to get everything out of the system that was in there to begin with that was not helping us. All the endotoxins, all the trash. We got to have good housekeeping in the whole abdominal system, liver, gallbladder, intestines. All right, let's talk about what we can do for liver support. We talked about that earlier. We're going to take some liver support herbs. So Herb Farm has a product called Liver Support. It's for sale on Full Scripts, last I checked. It is an alcohol extraction, which is a tincture of milk thistle, dandelion, artichoke, and schisandra. Okay. Milk thistle is hepatoprotective. That means it protects the liver cells. I can't think of a better herb to give the liver because the liver has to detox your herbs that you give it. So give it something that protects itself while it detoxes it, right? So it's kind of like a little joke I have with myself. Like you could probably never take enough milk thistle because it's like boosting the function of the liver while it's detoxing itself. Anyway, those are just the kind of things that make me laugh. Anyway, so and regenerates. It's an antioxidant and it regenerates liver tissue. Dandelion root supports bile flow from the liver to the gallbladder, helping the elimination of waste and allowing you to have more bile to break down your fats, to take in that vitamin A, that vitamin D, all your essential fatty acids that you need to have strong skin and like have less headaches and all the things that we need essential fatty acids for. Okay. Artichoke stimulates bile and aids in digestion. That's more digestive enzymes. And schisandra is an adaptogen and enhances both phases of liver detox. Liver detox phase 1 and 2. Okay. And the liver detoxification process is quite extravagant and sophisticated. And it involves lots of different processes, but schisandra just supports the whole thing. Okay. So that's the end of liver support. So my best suggestion for supporting your liver is just having this tincture in hand and using this through the winter season intermittently, and then leaning on it when children get sick. Okay, let's talk about a supplement called.
Can you just repeat the name of that blend real
Yeah,
quick?
liver support from Herb Farm. Liver support from Herb Farm. Okay, and they have
Okay,
a
thanks.
4-ounce bottle for sale on Full Script. N-acetylcysteine or NAC. Okay, this supplement supports the mucosal lining, right? So it's mucolytic. It's antioxidant. It offers post-viral lung support. It boosts glutathione. It's one of the main components that are needed to make glutathione. You know, you can't just like give someone oral glutathione and like it's not the best way to get it. Like people do like rectal suppositories and they do IV glutathione. You can give people like liposomal glutathione, but it just doesn't take the same way. So typically we lean on supplements to build glutathione. And so that's alpha lipolic acid and NAC work together. But even on its own, it is super supportive of making glutathione. This is our master antioxidant in the liver, and it protects immune cells and reduces oxidative stress. Okay. So it thins mucus to ease the respiratory system. So sometimes when we get dehydrated or when we're just sick, the mucus can get really thick. Okay. And in order to move things that are getting stuck in the mucosal layer, that are getting stuck there on purpose so that we can actually get them out, we have to have a thin enough mucus to cough it up, right? So there's a drug called Mucinex or guaifenesin that does the same thing, but we can just use N-acetylcysteine. Okay. It modulates inflammation. Again, here's where we're talking about that balance in the cytokine response, where we're not overshooting, we're not undershooting. This is really important for children. Supports liver detox, like I just said, and helps support symptom duration and improve recovery. Okay, so that's all N-acetylcysteine or NAC. Next thing I want to talk about is B vitamins, especially B6, B12, folate, and riboflavin. But if you have a good source of B vitamins, you're usually going to get all of them. Okay, so they run the methylation cycle. That means detoxification, the impact on the presence or lack thereof of our neurotransmitters. What am I talking about? Serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and others. And immune cell production. So what methylation is or isn't is like the easiest way I can explain it is like a series of like light switches that are on and off that allow certain systems in the body to happen. You have to be able to take something and put a methyl group on it for it to work. So B vitamins have to receive a methyl donation to be able to be utilized. And some people don't do that. So we get pre-methylated B vitamins. And so what's so interesting is that they're needed for methylation to happen, and they require methylation to be able to use them. So it's a funny cycle. So we tend these days, most supplement companies that are valuable just give pre-methylated B vitamins because they know that a large percentage of our population needs that. Okay. Um, B vitamins are important in illness, stress, growth spurts. All of these things eat through B vitamins very quickly, and so we need more. Um, if we happen to see hyperactivity, irritability, headaches, vivid dreams, or trouble falling asleep, back off your B vitamins, move them to the beginning of the day, give yourself a half dose. So if you're giving them to your kids, if you're noticing those things, or if you see those things in yourself, just back down a little bit or talk to me about it. Talked about why we do the MTHFR. Food-based multi B vitamins work best. You can get your B12 and your folate from grass-fed beef liver. Okay. And okay, so the dosage for kids. So I came up with a couple different options from Fullscript. One was Neurovite, which is a multivitamin supplement that I was like pretty okay with. I'm not a super big fan of multivitamins because I don't like added vitamin D and I don't like added iron. And a lot of times multivitamins have vitamin A in the form of beta carotene, which is not an easy conversion for the body to turn it into retinol, which is the vitamin A we can use. But this was actually like had retinol for vitamin A, and I don't think it had iron, and the vitamin D was pretty low. So I was like, all right. So it's called Neurovite, Neurovite. And it was 2 chewables for 40 pounds or 4 chewables for 80 pounds. What I use is Quicksilver Scientific liposomal B complex. Um, and if someone's 65 pounds, they can do 1 pump. If they're bigger than 65 pounds, they can do 2 pumps a day. If they're 30 pounds, they could do 1 pump every other day or just like a half pump. And what you can do is you can like pump it into like a spoon or a little container and just give them half of it and then half the next day. Or if you've got 2 kids, like split the dose in two if you do 1 pump. Okay. So that's the B vitamins. You can also get B vitamins from bee pollen and nutritional yeast. And then there's a lot of B vitamins in other pasture raised animal products, but they're the most concentrated in grass fed beef liver. All right. Now, magnesium. Okay. So I like glycinate and malate as the most observable forms. Malate starts with an M. It reminds me of the morning times, a little more activating, a little more energizing. Glycinate is a G, good night's sleep. That's the one that's more relaxing, it's more calming. Honestly, I personally don't notice a big shift, but it's like if you have them both, because it's better to get magnesium from as many forms as possible, then you can do your malate in the morning and your glycinate in the night, and you can use your trace minerals research, trace mineral drops, and get your magnesium in the middle of the day that way. So magnesium calms the nervous system, it supports sleep, it balances immunity, and aids in detox. The dosage is up to 5 times your body weight in milligrams of magnesium a day. So what does that mean? If you weigh 100 pounds, you could take 500 milligrams of magnesium. Now, and that's total magnesium, like adding up all the different kinds of magnesium that you're taking. Does that mean that you need to start at 500? No, it means you need to start at like 150 and see how that goes for you. You're going to bowel tolerance. So again, if the stool is getting softer, if you're getting a looser stool, especially if you're going to diarrhea, you need to back off your magnesium. Some people just can't tolerate that much of it. Okay. Magnesium helps our sleep. It produces GABA, which is that's our neurotransmitter that is our off switch. So it's like your go, 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 kick in the GABA, turn it off, go to sleep, relax, rejuvenate, rest. Okay. Restless, anxiety, can't wind down, that kind of person, that's who needs the magnesium glycinate and the support, the GABA. It supports mood and behavior by reducing irritability and tantrums. It can reduce cortisol. Muscle growth and support, growing pains, restless legs, muscle cramps. It can decrease constipation with digestion. Even the magnesium malate and glycinate can support with the decrease in constipation because it still is loosening the stool and relaxing the smooth muscles in the bowel, allowing the stool to move through a little bit faster. Magnesium can help with energy and focus. A large component of cellular energy production can calm and it's responsible for a large component of cellular energy production, and that's like our ATP, right? And it can calm the nervous system to support focus. Okay. Now, immune and inflammation, it lowers background inflammation in allergies, asthma, autoimmune conditions, and skin conditions, and it regulates the immune system. So it's like that's our baseline inflammation that we're talking about too, right? So like if you're like an inflamed person, if you're having lots of allergies, if you have an autoimmune condition, when you take the magnesium, it's just going to lower that threshold. So then if you get sick on top of it, it's not going to be such an explosion. Okay. Real quick, shout out to zinc. I like to be careful with zinc because copper is really important in our bodies and I don't want to displace it with too much zinc, but zinc does have viral defense, tissue repair. It's like the multi-tool of the immune system. It's barrier support, like mucosal barrier, GI barrier, immune memory, obviously secretory IgA if we're talking about that immune support. It's a cofactor of 300 enzymes. It's supportive of the antioxidants, and just be careful to balance it with copper. Okay, here comes vitamin D, right? All right, so everybody knows I have these like hesitations around synthetic vitamin D. Vitamin D in its beauty is the first responder. It increases efficacy of the first team on the scene when you're sick, okay? Immune cell activation, it decreases inflammation. It is like the gas pedal of the immune system, right? We got to go and we got to go now and we got to get there. However, a gas pedal without a steering wheel gets you in trouble. So it's really important that we talk about the synergy of vitamin A with vitamin D. Okay. Balance matters. Vitamin D activates the immune system. Vitamin A guides and regulates the immune system, ensuring that the response is precise and not overly inflammatory. You know, a lot of people tell people with autoimmune conditions to go up to like 80 on a scale of like, 30 to 100 being considered normal. And I'm more like on the low side, like even 20 is okay on vitamin D. They're like, get up to 80. But if you get up to 80 without a balance with your vitamin A, you can actually cause over inflammation of your autoimmune condition. So we have to be really careful how we're talking to people about vitamin D. Too much of one or the other, A or D, can cause imbalance. High D without A may drive the immune system without enough regulation. High A without D might build barriers but not activate the defenses strongly enough. So together, they strengthen the mucosal defense, secretory IgA, activate pathogen killing immune cells, and regulate inflammation so it's protective, not damaging, right? Like we don't have to talk about that. We just like, this is something that's like more nuanced and like I've talked about this in anthroposophic medicine circles. Like when you're sick, you're in a state of inflammation, right? And that inflammation can be really helpful. It can mobilize the immune system. We've got all this extra fluid. We've got heat. We're raising the body temperature. We're sequestering the iron away from the virus because that's what the virus is after. So when we raise the body temperature, the viruses can't feed the same way. That's why we get fevers when we're ill. It's a response to a pathogen. It's not a problem in itself. The fever is like trying to help deal with the illness, right? But we can have too much inflammation. And when we have too much inflammation, we kind of like melt into soup. And we don't want our organs melting into soup, right? So we don't want too much trash, but we do want to cause the inflammation. So we're like always looking for that perfect balance point, okay? So we want the inflammation to be protective, but not damaging. All right, let's talk about vitamin A for just a second. It strengthens barriers. It helps with the innate and adaptive immunity. It's important in eye health and cellular communication. And just as a side note, those bumps on the back of your arm, if you have them, you don't have enough vitamin A. Okay. I know some of you have them out there. Someone watching this video is like, what are those bumps on the back of my arm? Why do we take cod liver oil? Vitamin A and vitamin D, reducing inflammation, those omega 3s, and reduce our inflammation. Vitamin A and vitamin D from cod liver oil support growth, vision, brain development, and provide gentle and consistent immune support. Okay. Cod liver oil has this like wonderful balance of vitamin A and vitamin D. And if you take that as your vitamin D supplement, you're going to do well. You're going to have the right balance. If you've been like hyper loading yourself with synthetic vitamin D for years, it's going to take a couple years for your vitamin D to come into balance. And we can track that with blood testing. Okay. Vitamin grass-fed beef liver capsules or food are an awesome source of vitamin A as well, but also an awesome source of vitamin B12, folate, zinc, iron, copper. Okay. And CoQ10 and choline, which I'll talk about in a second. So I consider grass-fed beef liver to be like nature's multivitamin and immune support via all these micronutrients. Okay. So you can do, for an adult, you can do 6 capsules of grass-fed beef liver a day, or you can do 4 to 6 ounces of grass-fed beef liver a week. So the capsules are like freeze-dried, like concentrated. High in vitamin A, we just talked about that. B12 and folate prevent fatigue during illness and support the metabolism and the detoxification in the liver. We talked about zinc being this multi-tool for the immune system. This is real bioavailable iron that you can actually do something with. We don't need that much iron, but if you actually really do need to build your blood and need iron, this is a good way to do it. It has copper in it. That supports oxidative stress, white blood cell function. It moves the iron in your body into the right places. Why is that important? Because iron that has gone rogue and is sitting exposed to oxygen will rust and cause oxidative stress in your body, which is not good. Okay. So we have to have an important, copper also supports and helps with collagen and connective tissue. Okay. So we want this, copper is very important. We don't want to go too high on the zinc because we want to make sure we're not throwing our copper out of balance as well. High quality proteins provide amino acids for repairing tissue during infection and producing antibodies. What I mean by that is the high quality proteins that you're getting from the grass-fed beef liver. Okay. Choline and CoQ10 support cell membrane integrity and energy production, decreasing reactive oxidative species, which is what causes oxidation and inflammation. The omegas in the grass-fed beef liver decrease immune overreaction. All right. Glutamine is the fuel for the enterocytes. These are the cells that line your gut. Okay. It's an amino acid, just like L-theanine or L-arginine or those are the 2 that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head. L-glutamate. Okay. So you've seen these like L things. Okay. This is another amino acid. So it comes from animal proteins. It increases your IgA. Lymphocytes and macrophages burn glutamine for energy during infection. Lymphocytes and macrophages are like coming in, they're eating all the pathogen. Okay. So burn through a lot of glutamine. So you got to replace your glutamine when you're sick. Okay. You can just get it in a powder or you can eat eggs. I know it's a bunch in eggs. We'd have to look into that more, what else it's in. Lymphocytes and macrophages helps make glutathione with glycine and cysteine. So L-glycine, L-cysteine, and L-glutamine are some of the ingredients making the glutathione. And it helps with the recovery process. It even helps maintain muscle mass during illness. Okay. Omega-3 fatty acids, they're in your cod liver oil. If I didn't mention it, Jigsaw brand is the most affordable, high quality. It's on Fullscripts. They have gel caps. They have liquid. The liquid really isn't that bad. It just tastes kind of lemony and very slightly fishy. Some of my kids would rather take the liquid than swallow the giant gel caps. Some of my kids like to eat the gel caps and crunch them for fun. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation, promote resolution of illness, and it's in cod liver oil and grass-fed beef liver. A few more. Collagen and glycine repair connective tissue in the barrier lining. This means mucous membranes that have been injured by all the pathogens and also in your gut. Glycine is an amino acid, and you can get it from bone broth and collagen. It's one of the components in glutathione. It works, it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So it blocks the neurotransmitters getting really excited. So it kind of calms everything down and allows the immune function to hit spot on. It helps the liver do its job of housekeeping. CoQ10 and carnitine support mitochondrial energy production. Quercetin and nettles stabilize mast cells and reduce excess inflammation. I like this product called Quercetin Plus from True Botanica. It's got quercetin, nettles, fenugreek, and the anthroposophic remedies for like runny nose and allergies. Okay. Throat defense. This is one of our last products. This is the product that I use to get Streptococcus salivarius K12 Bliss. This is a patented probiotic that coats the mouth and throat. Also can help with like gingivitis and the bacteria that promote gum disease. It colonizes the tonsils, reduces strep and ear infections, and viral throat illnesses. Okay, so this K12 Bliss promotes the production of lantibiotics, which support all these things that I just said. Okay, these natural peptides inhibit growth of bad bugs like Streptococcus pyogenes, that's strep throat, Haemophilus influenza, that's what the Hib B vaccine is for, and it also is present in flus and sinus infections. The Hib B vaccine, we talked about that in the vaccination lecture. So that's the thing that causes the meningitis, that like every once in a while someone gets this like really bad inflammation in their spinal cord and in their brain, which can make them very sick and put them at risk for death. So this is a great way to just protect yourself from that bug. Also, Moxarella catarrhis, which is ear infections and some forms of candida. So you're really just supporting that mucosal lining, the nose and the throat, lining it with a positive probiotic. It stimulates local secretory IgA, makes sense based on what we just said, balances inflammatory signaling in the oral and nasal mucosa. Kids who took this had fewer strep throats, fewer ear infections, and fewer antibiotics prescribed in clinical studies. Also, decreased bad breath because of the odor causing bacteria in the mouth is killed by this. And early data suggests that support for tonsillitis, pharyngitis, and even reduction in oral candiditis. All right, so that was a lot. Let's take a break and say, okay, if you could only buy three things, what should you buy? Okay, cod liver oil, probiotics, vitamin C. If you can add a few more things, we can add some magnesium, calms the nerves, supports the sleep, regulates the bowels, grass-fed beef liver, or the whole food B complex, nature's multivitamin, A, B, iron, copper, and adding the throat probiotic, prevents strep throat, sore throats, ear infections. And when you want even more protection, if you feel like you need some extra, you could add in jade windscreen, Yuping Fengguan. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's a traditional Chinese formula that is like an immune shield. And adding elderberry and echinacea in small bursts during viral exposure can also be supportive. Elderberry specifically can be given every day unless you are like asthma, autoimmune kind of leaning, and then we would want to talk about the nuances there. So again, tier one, cod liver oil, probiotics, and vitamin C every day during the illness. And this could be with or without the Saccharomyces, so the yeast probiotic. You can add that one, or you can just do regular probiotics, or do both. Tier two, strong foundation, add if able, magnesium, grass-fed beef liver, and throat defense. And then if you want to add even more, you can do elderberry every day and jade windscreen. So that gives you some priorities, because we talked about a lot of things and we need to break it down. Okay. If you're not doing beef liver, you can consider vitamin B also as like your third tier of supplements you could use. So I want to take a second and just talk about jade windscreen because I haven't talked about it yet. So this is a classic Chinese formula for defensive qi, right? It is immune barrier strengthening. It is for people who just feel like they get sick all the time. I put people on this and they stop getting sick all the time. Like people who work at childcare facilities are like, oh my God, I just got better and I'm sick again. We put them on the jade windscreen. They take it only when they're well. They stop taking it if they get sick. It's like it locks your defenses. So if you're like an allergic person, if you get sick all the time, if you feel like you might have boundary issues, because people with boundary issues take on other people's stuff a lot, even their illnesses, this is for you. It strengthens the Wei Qi. Now, you don't want to lock anything in once you're sick, though, right? So that's why we stop taking it when we're sick. We're going to lock it all in. We're going to lock it down. We're going to go out into the world with our little like Wei Qi, like shield, jade windscreen on, And then if we actually get a pathogen anyway, then we stop taking it and then we hit all the other acute things. Okay. So you can get it in a tincture, you can get it in a glycerin, you can get it in a capsule, you can get it in tea granules. So we can talk about how to get that for you if you want that. It also balances internal resilience with external protection. All right. So now we're going to talk about what you do if you do get sick. This was all like prevention of getting sick. Okay. So what are you supposed to do if you actually get sick? Oh my gosh, I don't feel good. So rest and rhythm, absolute first line, rest, warmth, hydration. Stop what you're doing. Stop trying to go to school, do the dishes, make the meal. Just stop and get in bed. If you can, if it's at all possible, lay down as much as possible and like just shut your eyes. It's so hard. Like we get sick and we just want to keep on going. But if it's possible, get in bed, get warmer than you normally would be. So dress your kids until they're slightly sweaty. I mean, it's hard. Sometimes they're like fighting you and they're just not going to do it. Like, don't create a battle. But if you can get them a little bit warmer, get them in the bath, drinking warm things, we're trying to raise the body temperature. We're trying to help the body do what it would naturally do. Okay. And hydration. Obviously, when we're hydrating, we're not going to get constipated as easily. We're peeing more, we're flushing our system. Okay, rest is when illness is when the body does its deep immune training. So rest, that's when it does its immune training, right? So like if we're ill, it's going to do the training. It's going to do the training better if you're resting. Keep the bowels moving. I didn't say this earlier because we were talking more about prevention, but think about your protein intake. If you are in the first day of an acute illness, make yourself a big pot of rice and just like have bone broth and rice and ghee or honey or like tamari. Maybe chop up some garlic and onions and put it in there. Open the exterior, push the pathogens out with the garlic and onions. Um, just keep like just keep it simple because protein is hard to digest and it takes a lot of effort. So we want to kind of like lighten up our digestive process, at least for the first day or two. Okay. Now I just want to talk about like what could you just get from your kitchen? Like before we're going to buy anything, we're going to grab anything. Okay. Warm broth. So your bone broth, your veggie broth, garlic, ginger, onion. You get your minerals, you get your glycine, you get your glutamine, you get your hydration that way. Even if you just cut up a carrot and onion and you boil it, right? I like to make, I like to save all my bones in kitchen like vegetable scraps and freeze it. And then when I get a certain amount, I like to throw it all in a pot and boil it for like 2 days. And then I make it really concentrated. I pour into little ice cube trays. And then I pop them all out and I put them in a Ziploc bag and I have like instant little bone broth cubes you can add water to for cooking or when you get sick. Herbal teas. What if you had like nothing? You might have ginger and lemon and honey. That's awesome, right? Or a little garlic. Make an infusion of garlic. Chop up like 4 or 6 cloves of garlic. Stick it in the bottom of a jar. Pour hot water. Put a lid on. Let it sit there for a couple hours. Strain out the garlic. Put a bunch of lemon and honey. You got garlic lemonade. It doesn't taste very garlicky, and you've got all this antiviral, antibacterial stuff in there, especially if your honey is raw. Man, lemon, honey, and ginger or garlic, awesome. If you have thyme or sage, you can make a tea out of that. It's expectorating, it's antiviral. Any of those things in the mint family that we season our poultry and meat with are awesome. Anything you would use to make sausage, like breakfast sausage, any of those warming herbs can be used. Also, a lot of our Indian warming spices like cardamom, ginger, cumin, coriander really help digestion. So you can make a little tea out of your warming spices that you would make Indian dishes and ghee with or Mexican dishes with. And you can use those in a tea to help your digestion to support yourself. So if you had nothing, you've still got lots of things in your home. Okay. Um, Chamomile calms and aids sleep and is a mild fever support. Garlic and onions are antiviral, antibiotic, and that sulfur compounds support the detoxification process. And citrus and berries are your vitamin C and your bioflavonoids. Okay. All right, let's talk about some targeted supplements. So we talked about vitamin C. We talked about so normally it's like 100, 150, 250 milligrams. I can work with you individually on your child's weight and doses for that. But when you're sick, you go to bowel tolerance. Vitamin A and D and When you're ill, obviously you're just going to be doing it anyway through your cod liver oil, but make sure you're doing it when you're sick. Like sometimes we skip it because it's in the refrigerator. So just make sure you're doing it on the days you're sick for mucosal repair and immune activation. Zinc when you're sick, adult dose is 30 milligrams. Direct antiviral effect. You can get the zinc lozenges, they go straight to your throat. Magnesium glycinate calms the nervous system, supports restorative sleep. We have to make sure we're resting. And acetylcysteine thins the mucus, supports the liver, lung antioxidant defense. We really support the lung tissue with the NAC in the targeted situation. All right, let's talk about herbal allies. Okay, we don't have too much more here. I know I'm going over 7 o'clock, but I just want to finish this up. So, rapid response botanicals. Okay, elderberry works really well in the early stage intervention. So when you're first getting sick, okay, start taking that elderberry. Okay, it is antiviral, it's anti-inflammatory, it's antioxidant, it's an immunogenic agent. It inhibits several strains of the flu and herpes simplex virus type 1. I didn't realize that until I wrote this and I was doing some research and I was like, hey, you're getting cold sores. What a great opportunity to take some elderberry. It also helps with upper respiratory infections, ear infections. Okay, so use the dosage on the bottle. There's usually like a before 4 and over 4 dosage. It's like a quarter of a teaspoon for like 25 and 30 pounds. Probably like 150 pounds would be like a full teaspoon. A 65-pound child is probably like a half a teaspoon. This is the kind of thing where you can take a little bit more of and it's not going to hurt you. You might just get diarrhea if you take too much. But the thing is, when you're sick, instead of doing it once a day for prevention, you want to do it 3 to 4 times a day. Now, here's my thing with herbs, right? Herbs clear through the system. So if you're trying to create a steady state of antiviral activity, you have to redose every 4 to 6 hours. You don't wake up your kid in the middle of the night. Just while they're awake, 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, something like that. Echinacea, okay? So there's like the flowers of echinacea, there's the young flowers of echinacea, there's the old mature flowers of echinacea, there's the roots, and they each one do something different. If you want long-term immunity, use the flowers. Like if you're using echinacea on a daily basis, you want to build your immunity, use the aerial parts. If you want to use it in an acute event, use the roots. And we harvest the roots when everything's dead in the surface because all the energy's gone back down to the roots. You don't want to harvest roots in the summer. And use the flowers when the flowers are at their high point, when all the energy's there in the flower. So that's when you make that medicine. So there's like summer medicine and there's like fall, winter medicine. Okay. Echinacea is anti-inflammatory. It's antimicrobial. It increases immune function. And like I said, the root tincture, the root alcohol extraction is appropriate for acute events. Okay. 2 to 4 years of age. I'm giving you some dosing instructions here. So 2 to 4 years of age, 20 to 30 drops 3 to 5 times a day. 5 to 8 years old, 40 to 60 drops 3 to 5 times a day. 9 to 11-year-olds, 60 to 80 drops or 3 to 5 times a day. 12 years and older, a teaspoon or 100 drops 3 to 5 times a day. Now, who is actually taking echinacea 3 to 5 times a day when they're sick, hoping for results? Not many people are. So, and these are high doses. A teaspoon of an herbal tincture. Usually you're taking like a dropper full. A dropper full, like as an adult, is like 30 drops. So that's like a toddler dose. So even if you were doing a dropper full 5 times a day and you're like, this doesn't work, that's why you're not taking high enough doses. Okay. Here is my favorite herb. I only rely on this herb when illness comes through, and it works for me like 99% of the time. Andrographis. I love andrographis. It is a bitter, cooling, astringent, analgesic, so like pain supporting or decreasing, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, antipyretic, bringing down fever, antioxidant, choleretic, which means it's moving the gall. It's getting that bile moving, okay? Hepatoprotective, protecting the liver, and it dispels heat and removes toxin. It does all those things, okay? So you're sick, right? And you've got this like lung, like funk and it's congested and you just can't get it moving on. And like, now that I think about it, I'm also constipated because in Chinese medicine, the lung and the liver go together. So you've got this awesome like herb that treats the digestion through the digestive bitters and the lung, the respiratory system simultaneously. Okay. It can support any itis from the head to the like head up here, like sinusitis, pharyngitis, um, you know, bronchitis, cystitis in the urinary tract. Okay. And it's prevention of the common cold, sinusitis, and gastrointestinal. So if you have like something going on in your GI tract that's inflammatory, it also takes care of that. So adults take 4 to 6 milliliters of extract daily. That means I'm taking like a dropper full of this like 5 to 6 times a day. Kids take between a half of a milliliter to 2 milliliters daily. That's like spread out over the hours. Okay. Just a few more herbs I want to mention. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce this herb. It's the African geranium, but the Latin name is pelargonium. I'm going to call it pelargonium, but it's African geranium. Okay. I have not found this herb widely available, but I remember that the homeopathic form was in this cough syrup that used to be on the market and might still be on the market. It was called Umka. Okay. And the homeopathic version of this herb is what was the active constituent in this cough syrup. So when I found out about this plant, I was so excited because it's so good from bronchitis, acute respiratory infections, sinusitis, throat, and tonsil infections. I was like, I got to find this plant, right? So where did I find it? I found it in everyone's favorite cough syrup, lung root. That's the one from True Botanica. It's the one I always recommend. And it works so well and so fast because this is a product that has the herbal extraction and the homeopathic together. So it works quick because you've got homeopathy, and it works for the long haul because it's herbal. So throat defense from True Botanica. It's like $14 a bottle, wholesale. Okay. Oil of oregano, just a few like these are the major ones I just mentioned, and I'm just gonna boom, 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 like mention a couple others. Oil of oregano, thyme, garlic, lemon. If things need soothing, like if things are sore, right? Demulcents, slippery elm, marshmallow, licorice, aloe, plantain. You can go and get like marshmallow root and licorice root and slippery elm from the co-op, and you can make a little like tea out of it. And it's kind of like that throat coat tea from traditional medicinals. Specific herbs that modulate the immune system, like we said, not too high, not too low. That's our echinacea. That's astragalus. Astragalus is one of the key components in the jade windscreen, and it's in our medicinal mushrooms, and it's also in our Saccharomyces because they both have the beta glucan, that beta glucans that boost your secretory IgA. Anti-inflammatories, chamomile, nettle, skullcap, turmeric. Sometimes you just have too much inflammation. It's like the melt is overtaking the structure and we're about to lose structure. There's just like so much mucus. It's like overwhelming us, right? So that's when we really need to like target anti-inflammatories. So turmeric is a great one, nettle, skullcap, chamomile. Sometimes we need to tighten and tone. That's our raspberry and our calendula. And then some general lung tonics. Like if you just keep getting the lung thing and it just won't stop, thyme, mullein, elecampane, elderflower. And then pain. Sometimes when we're sick, we have pain and we just need to sleep. California poppy, meadowsweet, and then the good old aspirea compound that I'm always talking about. And then if you get sinusitis and it's stuck and it won't go anywhere and you're like, I need an antibiotic, or even before you get there, Bian Pian, another Chinese formula. I love to lean on this. It is like, it is like the most awesome decongestant on the planet. It will just like open up, it'll decrease all the swelling and all the mucus that was stuck in your head, you're going to blow out. It's also good for when your ears are clogged and you can't get them unclogged. The other thing I want to mention, you guys, is there are a million herbs I could have talked about here. I could have mentioned OSHA for the lungs. I could have talked about wild cherry bark. I could have talked about elecampane. I could have talked about red clover. It just like I could have talked about 50 different herbs and how they support the immune system, but we have to pick some, right? And we just have to create a protocol and like, what are we going to use when we get sick? We're going to use what works. So the ones that I talked about, the ones that I lean on the most, um, I also want to mention that we also have the option to do topical therapies like chest rubs. You can use a carrier oil like olive oil, coconut oil, and you can put a little bit of thyme, eucalyptus, or chamomile in like over the chest. Okay. Plantain beeswax, topical from Uriel, is a great, you put it on your back, you put it on your chest. You can rub it over your sinuses when they're congested. It has eucalyptus in there, but it has a lot of other really good things to open up the breathing. Okay, so it's a topical, so you don't have to take anything internal. Castor oil packs. Castor oil pack is where you take castor oil and you soak a cloth and you put it on a part of the body. You put a hot water bottle on top and you drive that castor oil in there. It calms inflammation. It supports detoxification. It eases cough. So you can do that over the liver or the chest. Warm compresses. You can put onions. You can warm up an onion in a baggie, like a little, not in a baggie. You can warm up an onion on a cast iron skillet. Make a little baggie out of like some jersey material, like a cut up T-shirt. Secure it with a rubber band and put it over the ear to help with the swelling and the inflammation in the ear. Okay. Um, Mustard foot baths. When you have inflammation in the head, you soak your feet in some mustard. We got to get the right recipe from me because mustard can burn the skin, but it pulls the circulation downward and eases all the inflammation in the head and chest. Okay. Steam inhalations. When you're congested, hot water with thyme, eucalyptus, or chamomile clears the sinuses. If you want like a product, I'm just going to mention a couple products that were available on full script through Herb Farm: the Immune Avenger and the Immune Fortifier. So the Avenger was more like for acute things, and the Fortifier was more like long term. The Avenger had echinacea root, elderberry fruit, meadowsweet for pain and inflammation, anise hyssop, leaf and flower, ginger for warming, horseradish for warming. Horseradish also has sulfur in it, so it can break things up and support the detoxification process. Thyme, we also mentioned, and cinnamon bark. Okay. The fortifier had astragalus in it, elderberry, echinacea, reishi, and cinnamon bark. There also is a product from Gaia. It's a little bit expensive, but it's called Immune Rapid Response. You'd probably use the whole bottle in 5 days, and it's like $25 on full scripts. But it is the echinacea, the elderberry, and the andrographis all in one. And we used to use that in my house before I just like went diehard andrographis. And it worked really well. You could buy a bottle of it and you were getting sick, and it was just like, it really decreased the severity and the length of the illness. And it really could prevent things if you got it fast enough. Okay. Also want to mention our anthroposophic remedies. I didn't put these in the forefront because I always talk about these and you guys have books about these. But in terms of giving your body nothing to digest and still making an impact, this is awesome, right? So we know, as we mentioned earlier, the liver still has to process all these herbs. So an anthroposophic remedy is a really nice gesture to your digestive system and your liver to give yourself something that's going to make an impact towards wellness without causing a whole lot of extra stress on your system. Cinnabar dandelion for the beginning of an illness, stuffy nose, sore throat, inflammation in the head, maybe the beginning of a cough. Purple coneflower throat spray. This stuff is not just for band-aiding your pain. It doesn't just make the throat feel better for 5 minutes. It literally is treating the throat. The stuff in there is so good. Citrus urtica comp is an allergy formula that's really good anytime you have a lot of runny snot coming out. Okay. Quercetin Plus, that's the product I mentioned from True Botanica. It's really awesome. I use this often when there's a runny nose picture in an illness. I also use it for allergies. Okay. The True Botanica lung root we talked about earlier when we were talking about that African geranium. Carbocamellia. I didn't talk a lot about nausea and vomiting in this talk, but this is my go-to for acute nausea and vomiting. It comes in a powder form. I give it to my kids on a spoon covered in honey, and they take it, and it's chalky, but they are taking the honey, so they don't care. It's helpful for nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. We've even used it for constipation in some kids. It's even used for Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome, more chronic illnesses. Apis belladonna mercurius is your go-to for throat infections, fevers, strep throat, um, ear infections, mastitis, Lyme prevention. I mean, Lyme prevention isn't under this territory, but it's like any fluid imbalance thing going on in the head. And then echinacea thuja is like when the illness just gets like a little bit more intense. They were recommending it for COVID back in the early 2020s. And I mentioned that plantain beeswax cough. So those are my favorite anthroposophic remedies. Okay. And then I just want to end this conversation with a plug for my like new favorite support tool for all of us. And I just figured I would put it here because it's a huge piece of our immune support. But I want to talk about this 3x4 genetic test. So this test is $300. You can buy it directly from the company. That's probably actually the cheapest way to get it. And if you buy more than one, you get like a discount. Okay. So it's a swab. So it's a non-invasive test. It's just a swab of the inner mouth. And I'm looking at it going, it's giving me your entire genetic sequencing. What is that going to do? Well, we're going to talk about all the different things it can do in just a minute, but I can look at that and go, whoa, okay, what is this person's tendencies? How can I match supplements and herbs and tools that they're going to be able to utilize based on their genetic sequencing? Now, we need to make a comment about the difference between genotype and phenotype, right? So genotype is your genetic sequencing. Phenotype is what expresses based on what you're doing, where you are, and what's in your environment, right? So which genes turn on and off are dependent on your lifestyle, your diet, all these things. So like let's review like all the different things it could show us, okay? So personalized nutrition and supplement guidance. So we all process supplements and nutrients differently based on our genetics. So some kids really need that retinol version of vitamin A, and other kids might be able to get by with the beta carotene, right? So it's really going to help us like tailor the foods, diet, and supplements that we recommend for the individual, whether it's a child or an adult. I'm thinking to myself, my family's going to save so much money on supplements because we use so many supplements, and I'm always trying to like help my husband optimize everything. Um, and I'm always throwing all these things at him. And if I actually knew what things he like really actually needed, like we're going to save some money here. So I was like, wow, this test might actually save us money by just getting the test. We need to consider, especially with kids, supporting healthy growth and development. Certain genes influence bone growth, muscle development, and cognitive maturation. Testing can reveal hidden nutrient needs and metabolism differences so we can intervene early rather than later, right? So we don't want to find these things out in our 30s. We want to find out when they're 5 so we can make the impact now while they're still growing. We want to optimize detoxification and environmental resilience, okay? We are in a lot of toxins. I hate to say it. This is a really beautiful earth that we live in, and we have put things on this earth that not everyone can process. So the genes are going to tell us how you process your toxins, metals, and common chemicals. Some children are going to be slower detoxifiers. That puts them at higher risk for oxidative stress, ADHD-like behaviors, and sensitivity to environmental triggers. Those are the kids that we're going to be like, hey, we need a treat. We need to support the liver. We need to support detoxification. Not everybody needs that all the time, okay? Results guide lifestyle strategies and target nutrients like glutathione support, methylation cofactors, and such. Better immunity and allergy management. Our genes influence immune balance, inflammatory responses, and histamine metabolism. So it's going to identify the kids that we should check for food sensitivities, allergies, okay? It's going to identify the kids who are going to get sick more often. And it's going to guide supportive interventions like the use of probiotics, the use of quercetin, other antihistamines, as well as DAO, which is the enzyme that breaks down histamine. And if you don't have that, you're going to be running higher histamines, having more reactions that are unpleasant in the body. So we do DAO support. Now, DAO is not a very cheap supplement, so I don't want to just throw it at people, but if I know that you need it, then we can utilize it. Supporting mental and emotional health. So genetic variations affect our neurotransmitters and our metabolism, like they're the metabolism of our neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. Knowing these things can help parents support mood regulation, attention, sleep, and activity, anxiety through diet, lifestyle, and targeted supplementation. Medication safety and efficacy. Some panels are going to show us how the kids metabolize medications like ADHD meds, pain medications, and antibiotics, and help avoid side effects or under or overdosing, supporting safer prescribing. Early identification of risks. Certain genes highlight predispositions to metabolic issues, cardiovascular markers, or detox challenges. Early awareness will allow us to take preventative steps long before problems arise. We are also hoping to empower parents with actionable insights because the guidebook that comes with this test is so user friendly. It's like colorful pages with imaging. So you get this really nice product that can be with your child for the rest of their life. Their genes aren't going to change, and they're going to have this pamphlet that they can carry with them even into adulthood that's going to say, hey, look, you need to remember to focus on these things and not these things. Let's see, removes all the guesswork from supplementation, and it is a non-invasive it's a non-invasive test, like just a cheek swab. So wow, thank you all for sticking with me so that was a lot of information. I'm so glad that we got through it. I'm so glad that this is going to be up on YouTube for anyone in the practice to watch from now on. Consider what you need to do to prepare yourself for the inflammatory events of an acute illness. Get your plan in place, decide which supplements you want to utilize, which foods, which practices, which herbs you might want to utilize for basic support, and then make a plan for your acute. Let's get those products in your house before you get sick. If you need recommendations through Full Script, reach out to wholefamilymedicine@gmail.com, and the ladies and I can support you in getting those things in your Full Script account. Consider doing the 3x4 test. I was talking to one of my kind of like adopted teenagers, young adults, and he was like, what a great Christmas present. I was like, what a great idea, right? So, I want all my family members to do this test, like you know, my immediate family, but we've got a lot of people in family. So, we might be asking relatives to give this to us for Christmas. If, you want to get this for your kids, you want to get this for your spouse, you want your parents to have some money to throw towards the family for Christmas, ask them to get this test for you because this information doesn't change. It's not like a gut test where we're going to see what's going on in your gut and then we're going to treat you and then we're going to retest or just know that you went into remission. So it's like this is a really awesome opportunity to like utilize kind of some forward thinking medicine so that we can save money, we can prevent problems before they are created, we can use supplements wisely, we can know where to target. Like if we're gonna choose a supplement for our kids or for ourselves, oh, I really need to focus on metabolism, or I really need to focus on cardiovascular, I really need to focus on detoxification. Like if we have to pick and choose, like where's the most important place that we need to intervene? And then also like what lifestyle interventions are going to be the most important? Is exercising going to be more important than eating cruciferous vegetables or vice versa? What kind of exercise is going to be most important for your body? So, um, I'm just excited about this test. I see a lot of clinical utilization for it. And I think it's something we can continue to use for a long time. It's not time sensitive. So I've just talked for an hour and a half. Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Christine, for being here with me today. It's really awesome to just get to talk to y'all and love to see all the babes in there. I saw Aurora and either Karis or Freya, and I see Surya there too. So good to see you all. And yeah, so if y'all have any questions or want to talk more, just let's make an appointment with me or Christine and let's do it, okay? Does anybody have any questions before we sign off? I talked a lot. You might not. I might have
I'll
answered.
probably think of questions later.
Always email questions. Okay. Well, lots of love to all of you. Have a beautiful evening, and we shall see each other soon.
Thank you.